I believe the top three offensive producers so far are Jody's favorite, Tua in Miami. Number two, Jalen Hurts, Alabama. Number three, Carson Wentz. How about that?
No.
Chris,
all right. We'll punch Chris Franklin up here if Tone is capable of doing just that, and let him join us as part of this celebration after
Look
a
at that.
huge
Look at and Chris is up early. Beautiful day.
Where the hell are you, Franklin?
We're one from the broadcasting live from the beautiful first state of Delaware. We're down here and experiencing everything. The sun's out and running on adrenaline.
Sun's out. Why aren't the guns out? Get that jacket off there. Come on, you want to be a tough guy?
Oh, you mean I got to sit there looking? I got to look at offensive lineman physique. That Jalen Hurts physique running around like that.
The sun is out on the Philadelphia Eagles as well. That was a dominating performance. I don't even think the final score is indicative of how much the Eagles dominated that game. Where do you start? Who was better, Chris? Offense or defense? Because it's a tough question.
See, I'd probably still go offense, even though because I think a lot of defense at the end was basically it forced the Vikings to go one-dimensional by throwing all the time, which played into the hands of Kirk Cousins being a turnover machine. It was pretty much. But I think overall, I think the offense, you got to look at what they did. They were tough to stop. I think running the ball, I think they could have ran the ball a lot more, and they still would have picked up a lot of yards against that Vikings defense.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed they didn't get to 200. I said they'd get to 200 rushing the football. They only got to 163. I say only 163 for this team. Yeah.
All right. Johnny Mack asked this of Joe Sanlaquito and me earlier in the show, so I'm going to turn around and ask you. Eagles dominated the Vikings. Vikings looked pretty damn good beating the Packers in week number 1, and they came in here and laid an egg last night. More so, Eagles stood up to the challenge and beat them down, or maybe the Vikings week 1 win over Green Bay, a little bit of a mirage, and they're not as good as they looked. Which one do you think it was more last night?
If it was a yes or no, I'd have to go with the week 1 was a mirage, because I think that when you look, the Packers are not as bad as they are. I think when you look at with it being week 1, with Rodgers getting used to his receivers, and get a mesh with him with the Con Air look and everything, finally settling back into football and finally get everything settled on that one. But
the Nick Cage look.
Yeah, he's walking around like, what's going on? But yeah, when you look at he settles in as it goes, you're like, oh wow, week 1 they lost to the Vikings that badly. It's going to look more like that. But you can't discredit, I think, what the Eagles did as well too. I think overall, I think that was the best game plan I've seen offensively and defensively since this coaching staff has gotten here into Philadelphia. And I think when you look at what they did, I think it was overall. So it was still good what they did, but overall, I think it was more the Vikings laying the egg on this one.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering, Chris, is like, how much did we learn from this game? Are the Eagles really good, or the Vikings? Because that looked like a poor game plan from a rookie coach. Now, the D coordinator has been coaching forever. I don't know what he was trying to do. I mean, guys are running free, busted coverages. So how much was it the Eagles are really good or the Vikings were really bad? You seem to be leaning towards Vikings being really bad.
Well, also, what's funny too? It's funny bringing Don's hell up, because he should have had a sense of what Jalen Hurts can do, being that he was there in Denver last year.
Yeah.
And he saw what he did. So he thought that maybe he would take some of what he learned from that and put into this game plan. But I'm looking at the Eagles right now, where they constructed. If I had to put them right now against some of those top teams, if I played them against the Buccaneers, well, right now, the injured Buccaneers, but if it was the Buccaneers at full strength, I'd still take the Buccaneers. If it was the Rams at full strength, I'd still take the Rams. But I think they solidified themselves in that conversation, saying, you know what? They could become a legitimate NFC championship team. You wouldn't be surprised if it happened. I wouldn't say it would happen, but I would think you wouldn't be surprised if it happened down the line. Still a lot of football to play, but you have to be encouraged, I think, with the pieces, the way they played in the first couple of weeks.
It's funny. It's funny that you say that because you said the mirage, the Vikings Packer game might be a mirage. How does week 1 relate to week 2 comparison? You know what? I might have to go back and give the Detroit Lions some credit.
Yeah,
because the Eagles defense just took the Vikings out of that game last night, and the Lions moved the ball against the Eagles. Johnny Mack told me coming in, they got one of the better offensive lines in football, and people aren't giving them enough credit for that, me included. And then the Lions would turn around and put up another 30-plus spot this week. Maybe that Lion offense is better than we thought. And then the worries that we had about the Eagle defense, more so this week is what the Eagle defense truly looks like rather than last week when they gave up 35 to Detroit.
Yeah, it seems like this week for a lot of teams, it's the pendulum effect. It's like, okay, one week, oh my gosh, you look great, and then the next thing you know, swing back. Like, what's going on? I think this week, as we settle in to week 3 and 4, we'll start to see what the true sense of these teams are. And I mean, I watched that Lions game with the Command. I watched a good, decent part of that, or that Lions Commanders game, and I'm looking at the Lions. I'm like, maybe they actually are for real. Maybe they could be like a 6th or 7th seed.
I think they're better than the Vikings, to be honest. I think they have more talent. I think they're a better team. I do. It starts with that offensive line, but Aiden Hutchinson is already, when it's not Lane Johnson blocking him, he looked like a world beater. It's funny. Yeah. You and where do they get Jameson Williams back as well? Add him to that offense. I don't love the quarterback, obviously, but I think that team is turning the corner. Chris, you mentioned the Bucs, though. Here's what I can't figure out. Todd Bowles showed you how to deal with Jalen Hurts. Why does nobody try what Todd Bowles did? Why? When are we going to see that? When are we going to see? This is a copycat league, right? Everybody says that. When is somebody going to put in that film? Because I want to see if Jalen Hurts can deal with that defensive game plan.
See, I thought about that. Now I'm looking at the way that I'm trying to think like how teams can play him now, seeing this current version. You can't play a lot of man-to-man against him because I think the receivers that you have, you can't blitz too much because as soon as he can escape the pocket and create some time, and he can't play zone because he showed last night. I thought last night was his best performance in the pocket I've seen out of him since he's been in the league. He looked comfortable. Grant that sometimes the Vikings was like they know what they were doing pass rush wise, but they were getting a lot. They were actually getting some pressure a little bit too. So it's tough to come up with a game plan. You're going to have to throw a lot of disguises against him now, and hope he still hasn't seen some coverage scheme or some blitz schemes and coverage schemes he hasn't seen yet, because he's starting to get a feel for it. And if that happens, he gets comfortable with this offense. It's going to be tough.
Here's why I was as pumped up by Hurts's performance as it was last night. As I said to John earlier, he checked a lot of boxes. He threw short. He threw intermediate. He threw left. He threw right. He threw up the middle. He threw outside the numbers. He threw long. Although I think Chris Franklin could have completed that pass to Quez Watkins. He was so wide open. Jalen did get it out there. So you got to give him at least that much credit. The only thing he hasn't gotten together yet is the screen game and the interception last night. Yeah, we'll all blame Gainwell more and then Steichen, but it just, to me, it was a bad decision. Jalen shouldn't have thrown the ball. He should have thrown out of bounds or done something else with it. His numbers in the passes to the guys out of the backfield have not been great either of the first 2 games. Eagles going to get some practice time in on that this week, or do they get downtime? Or
short week?
Cram everything in there.
So don't look for the screen game next week against Washington. They get to that week 12.
And I wouldn't even say that because it's going to be tough. They can't even. I don't think you can use it a lot against WP too when they come the following week against Jacksonville because. He comes from that tree of, wait a minute, the split of the offensive lineman, and he's letting a lot of the guys go, okay, they get a good sense of that. So it's a timing thing, and this is where I was okay with, for the most part, with some of the practice schedules they have, but this is one of the downsides of not being able to do that is when you're developing the timing that you have for the spring game. It takes some time to get used to that. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, for like the last couple of seasons, going back to the Peterson era toward the end there, this team's been tough when it comes to having a true running back screen. They get the wide receiver screens out fine, but when it comes to that timing, the meshing, and everything that works in sync with the running back screen, the traditional screens, it seems to be an issue there. So I don't know how they. It's going to take some time, and looking at how detailed a lot of these things. Unless there's a team that is over aggressive on that defensive side, and I'm trying to think offhand. But looking at the next couple of weeks, I don't see it. So I think this week would have been the perfect week to do it. Next couple of weeks, maybe against Jacksonville, who knows? But so.
Well, let's the Eagles were so dominant. I'm getting antsy. I'm starting to get itchy. I can't. I've given them too many flowers. I got to start looking ahead. Washington Commanders. Now, they played Detroit, Minnesota, so NFC North start to the season. These teams are not familiar with the Eagles. They don't play them every year, even though the Eagles and Vikings, for whatever reason, have matched up quite a bit over the past number of years. They don't know each other like the back of their hands. In theory, Washington, the Giants, the Cowboys, and vice versa really know what the Eagles like to do, really know what the Eagles want to do. Does that mean Jack Del Rio, Ron Rivera will at least come up with a better plan to try to make things a little bit more difficult for this offense, or am I overblowing that type of scenario?
See, road division games for me are tough. And I saw somebody had line like 5.5 favorite Eagles, and I'm like, this is a little too much right now, because I still think that the Eagles, especially the Commanders, I still trust Ron Rivera's defensive prowess. Jack Del Rio sometimes questions some of the decisions he's made, i.e., look what happened last week. But I look at the game plans those two usually come up with, and I look at what they could do with Hurts, and I still will give them the benefit of a doubt. And especially with it being a division game, I think it's going to be closer than what people think it is. I truly do. I think because also the Commanders' offense is good. So
how about that with Carson Wentz? You heard it, Chris Franklin.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm not going to go that far. I say the receivers are good. It's going to be one of those things where we're going to see. It's going to be typical Carson Wentz fans. He's going to start out on fire and so, oh my goodness, why did the Eagles let him go? And then you'll see the turnover, the head scratching turnover, and the questionable fight, and the hero ball start to pop up halfway through. And yeah, I think it's going to be like a field goal game. I really believe that. And then I really think it could be a field goal game after everything's said and done.
All right, you were in the house last night. Johnny Mac was in the house last night. I'm judging via television. Sounded like a good crowd, that the Eagle fans were there from minute one, leather lung, screaming and yelling, and helped make how many times I see Kirk Cousins have to go to the ear flaps to make sure he could hear the play being called in. So an outstanding job by the Eagle fans last night, giving the Birds a home field advantage. How's it going to go this week in Washington? I've been there for Eagles-Redskin games. I don't get the games like you two guys, but I have been there for Eagle-Redskin games. And the Eagle fans can claim a pretty good chunk of that stadium. Now, it's not late in the season. The Commanders aren't already eliminated, which does happen. 1-1. Good thing they lost last week. Otherwise, they'd be 2-0. How much of an effect does Eagle Nation have in Washington next week in a week 3 game?
I guess it'd be like a 70-30 crowd. Just given that, just hope the people who actually go down there don't get stuck behind the pipes that burst down there or alongside the things that fall that way.
Not on goal at the stadium. Very good, Mr. Franklin.
I learned it from watching you guys. Just kidding. But when it comes to when you look at that, I think it's going to be a 70-30 crowd. I think the Eagles fans are going to travel down because there's a lot of hype around this team now. You've seen the 2-0. We got this squad now. You look at it and it's like, all right, cool, they'll be good. I think it won't be. I think on third downs you'll still hear a good subsection of Eagles fans for that. So you see wins going down just a little bit. So it won't be completely. They'll fire flashes trying and quiet. The offense is working. Meanwhile, the Eagles fans are using it a little bit. So it'll be a decent sized Eagles contingent, I think.
Yeah, it's so close. I thought there were going to be more Eagles fans in Detroit, but it's a little bit farther of a trip. That place was pretty much wall to wall Lions fans, which shocked me. Because the Eagles fans do take over stadiums, and they certainly do it in Washington late in the season, as Jody points out. Usually when the Commanders are out of it, they're in it, though. So, yeah, it is going to be interesting to see how many Eagles fans can get into that place. I think that's a good number, Chris, 70-30. And that'll be helpful for the Eagles. But I guess we'll keep going down this route. Carson Wentz, I believe the top 3 offensive producers so far are Jody's favorite, Tua in Miami. Number 2, Jalen Hurts, Alabama. Number 3, Carson Wentz. How about that?
No. I'll take that quarterback up in Buffalo ahead of Carson Wentz.
No, I'm saying
those are 3 right now. Yeah.
I'm saying Carson has produced more offense right now than Josh Allen. He's number 3. Jalen's number 2. Tua is number 1. Little revenge. People are talking about Jalen Reagor's revenge. He had a nice jet sweep. That's about it for Jalen. Carson Wentz obviously will have more of an opportunity. How big do you think that revenge aspect is for Carson Wentz?
Hold on. Let me ask you a question. What metric are we using to determine
just
the
total yardage, passing yards, total yardage was what it was, right, Chris?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, total offense when it comes to like rushing and passing. Because I think he has to do. I think when it comes to overall, because Washington doesn't really have a running game that I truly fear when it comes to that. So a lot of that's placed on the shoulders of Wentz, and him running for his life a couple times when the offensive line doesn't protect as well, and so he picks up his yards that way and scramble around like it's a family circle cartoon, stuff like that. I don't get some of that he does, man. But when you look at the way that I think overall he'll get his yards, especially if Gannon goes back to the way he traditionally has played beforehand and playing that. If he doesn't do a lot of them true man-to-man, if he doesn't true blitz and plays that shell like he didn't, if he plays more like Detroit, Wentz is going to get his yards. I wouldn't be surprised if Wentz got a total about 350.
Well, now I got a follow-up for you. It's interesting because that is, and I told Jody, in the modern game, so I'm not going back to like Deion Sanders or even Darrelle Revis. In the modern game, since everything has kind of shifted, that is the best game I've ever seen from a cornerback, Darius Slay. Unbelievable. Even when he gave up a completion, he was right there. He was a fingertip away from getting a pass breakup. Could have had 4 interceptions, really. It was unbelievable. But I don't think it's going to continue. Like I think I think the Eagles were very worried about Justin Jefferson. Even this week, you have a very good receiver in Terry McLaurin. I don't think the Eagles are going to do what they did with Darius Slay to shut down Terry McLaurin. Do you think I'm wrong or right about that?
I wouldn't be surprised if they did, but the thing that confounded me is why not try to scheme up Justin Jefferson and get him open in other ways? You could run rub outs, put him in the slot.
Oh yeah, well the Vikings did a horrible job. I mean, yeah,
he forced it over to. I'm sitting there waiting, like, what is?
Yeah, it looked like Sam Darnold just throwing it up for grabs.
It looked like James Bradbury. They feared James Bradbury more than his Slay, which was like, wait a minute, what? It should be the other way around. But I think you have to treat McLaurin. The problem is he plays in Washington. Because I think if McLaurin played for a higher profile team that wasn't going through its own issues right now, if it was he on the Dolphins instead of Hill, or he was somewhere else like a more prominent, better offense, I think he would be getting a lot more attention than he is right now. And I kind of feel bad for him in that way. That I think he's a really good receiver, and that nobody's truly talking about as like a top 5-ish. Everybody says, "Oh yeah, McLaurin. Oh yeah," because you say McLaurin. Oh yeah, he's good too. But no, I think he's really truly top tier. So I think he warrants playing that way. I don't know if the Eagles are going to do that in the sense that I think Wentz is a little bit more mobile than he got with Cousins.
All right, since we're looking at Carson Wentz's overall yardage through the air so far, I'm going to put the over/under number on interceptions next week at 1.5. You taking under or over?
I'm taking under just because historically the Eagles that was last night was an outlier for sure. When you look at the Eagles defense, you hope like they have the secondary that's capable of getting at least 2 a game, but I just don't see. Like, I don't think they'll get
got
that
3
many
last
turnovers.
night, so getting 2 should be doable. If you got 3 last night against Kirk Cousins, why can't you get 2 next week against Carson Wentz?
You know, it was such an outlier that, you know, Kirk Cousins threw 6 interceptions last year, Chris. He threw 3 against the Eagles, who haven't been able to turn the ball over. So I do think it was a little bit of an outlier. It is, but they do have playmakers now. I mean, Darius, we know, is a playmaker. Bradbury is a great zone corner. He's been able to make plays. Avonte Maddox, great interception. We're not talking about Avonte's interception because of Slay, but that was a tremendous sort of sunk in the zone, you know, showed up his vertical leap. And then C.J. Gardner-Johnson, you know, good ball skills. Marcus Epps, good ball skills. Maybe this team does have a chance to turn it over a little bit more, even playing zone defense, because they have guys who can make plays on the football.
See, if his zone, I feel like they can play. I think it plays more into Bradbury's hand in that. Now, don't get me wrong. I think when you look at this trio of cornerbacks with Slay, Bradbury, and Maddox, it truly reminds me. I know this may be sacrilegious to some, but it reminds me of Bobby Taylor, Troy Vincent, and Al Harris when they were playing around that time. I think they have that type of ability and talent that can really be dynamic. It's a matter of, I'm worried about long term, if there's no pass rush to get to them, how effective they can be, because there's only a corner can cover 4 or 5 and look great. 4 or 5 seconds is great, but they have to keep chasing around these guys when plays break down. They don't get the pass rush that happens from there. But I think overall, even when it comes to the ability to get, that's what I worry about. I don't know if they can get the interceptions because of the lack of consistent pass rush. You'll get your Josh Sweats here and there, getting hits and hurries here and there, but I don't know if they can continually get an output like a 2 or 3 interceptions a game when it comes to. They should, but I don't know unless they change some stuff up front.
Glad you brought up his name because I don't think we had yet today, and I think we need to. Josh Sweat. He was a non-participant week 1. He stayed pretty well hidden along that defensive line last night. Made a couple plays, including getting a sack. Also had some pressures. Nice to see Josh Sweat back in the fold as a key member of the Eagles' defensive line.
And they need it, because I'm still trying to figure out why they're still dropping Hassan Reddick back in coverage so much. I know he is just because somebody can do something doesn't mean you have to continually do
Quick
that.
question. I know neither one of you had time to review the tape yet. How many times do you think they did that yesterday?
Yeah, I don't think it was that much. I'm
Neither
guessing.
do I. Because the one time,
they got caught.
Catch that you blatantly saw. Oh my God! Why is he throwing him in coverage? I think it was the entire game. You just recognize it because they completed the pass on him.
I think it was 5 times in week 1. If it were 5 times in week 2, I wouldn't be surprised. If I'll look at the tape later, but I can live with that.
See, the problem is he played like 40-some snaps, and then you're taking, and I think we have to get that mentality of rushing the passer and to be a good one. I think you have to consistently doing that, and it seems like you're taking away some aggressiveness with him dropping back at times. Like, okay, sure, you can get a guy in the coverage, you can hit him after that, but I just want to see a guy who's shown in the past that he can be a good edge rusher coming off that consistency. I want to see him continually do that, because right now you're not getting as much pressure from one side. I mean, if you get Sweat coming up from that right side, okay, that's good because you finally got something there. If you finally get that rush up the middle, okay, that's there, but you're not getting anything from the production pass rush right on that left side. And I want Reddick to do what he does best. And to me, I still think he's rushing the passer. And if he's not being able to do that,
I had this conversation with Elliot Shore-Parks, and I'm like, if you're a power pitcher in baseball, you don't throw all fastballs. You gotta throw a curveball. I don't have a problem with it. When a quarterback doesn't see the zone blitz and all of a sudden they throw it right to it, we'll see if it works at some point. I get it. You want him, but he's not a defensive end. He is a Sam linebacker, so it's a little bit of a different position. And he has to drop to do some of those unique things that people want Jonathan Gannon to do. So you can't have it both ways, right? You can't.
I agree with you, John.
I think you can put him and now I'm drawing a blank there. I forget whose system it was, but there's ways you can they basically he was like a salmon in name only, or a strong side in name only, but they basically rushed him over. I think you can do that a lot, and you can get creative. Use him like as like a jack or a joker position. I think he'd do well, joker, as long as you keep continually rushing him. I think.
Well, that I agree with. Everywhere. I think they should move Hassan around a little bit more. Like the Vikings weren't successful, but they do it with Za'Darius Smith. The Cowboys do it with Micah Parsons. They move him. You know, they find out, you know, where's the weakness. All right, go there, Mike. I want to see more of that. I haven't seen that enough yet. I think that's a good, but I don't know if Hassan's that player. Like, I don't see. Well, nobody's Micah Parsons. That's probably unfair, but I don't see that ability to move around yet. Maybe he has it. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys could line Micah Parsons up 10 yards downfield out of bounds, and he'd still get to the quarterback. He's so scary good. He's unbelievable. Comparing anybody to him is just unfair to whoever you're using to compare with. But I like the Joker aspect of it that you guys were relating to. And the reason why it could work with the Eagles, Edwards is as good as he is, and Kazir White has, because if you're going to use a guy like that, you better have faith in your other two linebackers. They got to be able to play the run. They got to be able to play the pass. They got to be able to do everything. And the two other linebackers have been good enough for me these first 2 weeks to think something like that could actually work. All right. I wanted to touch on this with you. I asked Sandler Laquito about it earlier. Noah Tungiai play himself off the roster for week 3? When he missed that block on the PAT last night? I'm surprised that Calcaterra sat 2 games in a row, because he opened my eyes up in the limited preseason look we had at him. Did Noah drop the ball badly last night on his shot here?
The great Les Bowen, my partner over at NJ.com, he actually asked him a question about what he saw. Noah said that there was an overload with 5 people. They were rushing 5 on that one side, and they only had 2 to protect. So there's going to be basically going off the edge. That's according to Les when he talked to Noah. So if that's the case, you don't like to call timeout there or something like that, but maybe you should, like, I put the onus on him going, listen, guys, we're a little heavy on this side. We call timeout side, readjust, talk it over with Michael Clay, and see if they have that way too. So, but overall, the problem they have now is Calcaterra still needs to work on his blocking. He really does. So you can't bring him up.
They don't think he can block.
He can't do that. And Noah at least has some sorts of block and plays special teams, so you have that. Rich Rod's on the practice squad of Chargers. I don't know if you want to put him on the 53-man roster. They got the all spot, so you might see the. And the thing is, I think, and forgive me for get this wrong on the rules. I think they may have like 3 elevations. And you burned 2 of them already with Covey and with Togiai. So you're going to have to add somebody in the roster spot.
Yeah, Covey's going to be on the 53 as long as he doesn't fumble next week, eventually, when they run out of elevations. But they'll have to make a decision on Noah Tungiai. You're right about that, Chris. At C. Franklin News, NJ.com, South Jersey Times.
Let me get one more in for Chris here before we let him run. You just kind of led into it, John. Is Covey, if they're going to elevate him to the 53, and I agree with John, it's kind of an inevitability. They need to do it. They have to do it. Do they put him back for kickoffs too? Because I got to admit, Quez made a great catch downfield, ran just by
the return kicks.
He's bad on kick returns.
They did that.
Got to put Covey back there, right?
They did that mortar kick on purpose, Chris, because they think Quez is a terrible, and they're right. That's the one thing the Vikings got right. That's the one thing.
See, I think I can see the reasoning, and it's not talking to Michael Clay or anything, but the reasoning. I know a lot with kick returns too. If you give them a straight line speed, they have time to go straight ahead. They can do that, and they get that. But the kickoff return team needs to open more holes better too, because that. But you're right. When it comes to angling these kicks now, it has a little issue. That the problem with Covey is he's quick, but I don't see the same straight line speed that you had with Watkins. So, would you still wind up at the 20 no matter? You probably would wind up at the 20 no matter what with his speed. By the time he gets down there, kicks get down, the coverage, everything else. So it's almost.
Chris, here's the problem with Quez. You're right. He's got the straight line speed, But to be a kickoff returner, you also got to go north, south, and you got to break that first tackle. You got to have that power. Quest doesn't have that. He's just running by people. And if he can't run by people, he can't,
You know what makes me mad thinking about this? And I wish this guy developed more into a better special teams player or just an overall wide receiver. That seems like it has John Hightower written all over it, because I think he runs north-south. But the problem is he only runs that one route well, which is the go route, and you don't need a go route specialist because you got Watkins and everything else got to run that. But he seems like a prototypical guy. Listen, I don't know who's out there right now, and I don't know who's free agent who will be able to do that. I wouldn't mind
Scott, let Boston. I mean, he doesn't have the great speed, but Boston will get you to the 25 or 30, 35 if something happens. And, he can do it. He can do it. And I'm surprised they haven't gone in that direction. That's my 2 cents. Read Les Bowen as well, as he brought up at NJ.com. Now, before I let you go, Chris, great minds think alike. The big flag was back. I just saw you put it on your Twitter sort of banner. So did I. Great minds think alike. The big flag is back.
I had to, because the last thing I had was when I covered the Army-Navy game back when it snowed, and that was back in like 2015, 16. So I thought it was about time to switch this up a little bit, covering Eagles and not mostly college football. So, I think it was the time. It was that atmosphere last night. We talked about it with the fans, but just overall with that atmosphere, the crowd, the pageantry, and I forget his name, and I always forget. I'm sorry, but the anthem singer, and he's got those pipes going. It gets you flowing. And even though we're not players, we're reporters, stuff like that. When you sit there, you start looking around, it's like, all right, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, this is a place to play.
So if you don't know the anthem singer, Franklin, I'm sure you don't know the guy who carries the big flag either. You're both taking bows for acknowledging the big flag. Then you got to know who's carrying it, right? Who's out there on the field with the big flag last night?
The big flag is
90 season ticket holders, and that one too. And we want the Space Force flag to be out there with the rest of the other flags. Why not?
Now, interestingly enough, the reason they didn't have the big flag was because of the pandemic. So, the big flag caused the spread of COVID, I believe.
Oh, see, I never knew that.
You can't have that many people. So the big flag is back.
The way fast is faster.
Why didn't they get either of you guys to carry the big flag, since you kept taking the tests and testing negative so you could continue to do your job? They should have made you guys carry the big flag.
I would have
Can they pump through booze for the reporters when they get out there? Because I think they would have found a way to do that if we were out there.
I do miss the
Howard's already on the field. Make Howard carry the big flag. Come on.
Boy. No comment.
I'll tell you, the one thing I do miss was getting into the stadium easy. That is a thing of the past, Chris Franklin. Yeah.
It's like the old wooden labyrinths. You're going through around, you're trying to find out which way, and then right before because if you go out the wrong door at night, you will be stuck there until somebody comes there for probably a good 20, 30 minutes. So, yeah, it's like, okay, is it this door? Is it this door? It's fun.
You gave us a good 35 minutes today. We thank you for that. We get you back in a couple of weeks. Thanks for hopping in with us today.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Go cut down some bushes or something. You look like you're ready to go out.
Oh, there you go.
He's a tough guy. That offensive line, Bill. Go chop some wood. All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald, a.k.a. Mac and Mac. You know what we're going to do? We're going to come back, and for the 365th time, we're going to put a bow on the show.